Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything coming at you with another episode of Grind My Gears. In today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is Star Citizen and the conversations that I hear or see, read or hear about PvP, PvA, PvE, PvR, basically PvX. So first of all, I want to say that Star Citizen will have PvA, which is player versus all, but you do have a little bit of say on whether or not you primarily get engaged in PvE or PvP, and I'll go into that in just a second. There's two extreme sides to this argument, and I do say argument because it's heated. A lot of players are adamant about what side they're on. They're either PvPers, hardcore, or they're PvE players, and they're hardcore about it. And what I would like to do is just kind of be in the middle, PvA, and kind of shed a little light on both sides' reasons why they're hardcore to each side. Kind of be a mediator in a way to let you understand and to maybe alleviate some of your pain if you are like a PvP player and you have some grief against some PvE players. This might help in letting you kind of just understand their point of view. And the same thing with the PvE players. If you have some griefs against the PvP players, maybe this will help you understand some griefs about their playstyle, and maybe we'll be able to find some kind of happy medium. And I think that's exactly what Chris Roberts is trying to do with Star Citizen, and I'll explain that here in just a second. Okay, the first thing I want to do is kind of explain what each of these represent, okay? And that way you will have a better understanding of what these arguments are about. And you might pick a side. You might be like myself and try not to pick a side and try to, but okay. I feel like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I feel like I am a PvE player more than a PvP player, and that's because I suck. I suck. I'm a horrible player. I'll get into that in just a minute. Okay, now I laugh, but this really grinds my gears, guys. This really upsets me to see players arguing about something as frivolous as PvX. Okay, no, I take that back. It's not frivolous. It's very important to certain players, and I get that. I get that. I understand that it's super important, and people want to have fun, basically playing in their playstyle. And if the other playstyle would or possibly get in the way of their playstyle, then they don't want it in the game. And because they want to have the most fun playing their playstyle. I understand that. But you have to understand that Chris Roberts wants to please everyone. He wants he wants to make the PvP players happy. He wants to make the PvE players happy. And basically, because that's good business sense, because that way you get more players to draw for him. Okay, so let's talk about it. Okay, PvP. Okay, let's start talking about that. That is player versus other players. Okay, player versus player. You will engage in more than just combat. I know everybody focuses on combat, like missiles and lasers and stuff, but no, it's more than that. It's player versus player pits you and your intellect against other players' intellect and their physical abilities. So it challenges players to beat other human beings. And that's the primary reason why people play PvP, is because they enjoy the challenge of overcoming another player's machinations. So let's say there is a cargo that needs to be carried from point A to point B, and I take that cargo from point A to point B, but another player also takes that cargo and he gets there first and sells it before I get there, closing the request for that cargo. So that is a way to player versus player. He basically beat me at carrying cargo. Let's say I'm carrying that very same cargo, and a player in a fighter craft jumps out and attacks my ship and takes my cargo. That's another way for a player to compete against another player. I don't really consider that competition because, you know, merchant ships aren't really cut out to be fighting other players, you know, or any other ships. But so that's basically just taking advantage of the situation. But no, if you're a player and you see, let's say you're in a fighter and you see another fighter and you challenge them, maybe in the arena commander or something like that, you're actually engaging in dogfighting or fighting, player versus player. So you actually get a chance to pit your skills against other human beings. Who does player versus player play style appeal to? Okay. It appeals to players that are good at it, okay? Players that are successful and know they're successful tend to migrate towards PvP. So what you find happening is and I'm saying this based on just my observations. I don't have any facts to back this up, but I believe that players that, and I've played a ton of other MMOs. I've played, I don't know, I'm gonna have to say a dozen or more MMOs, okay? And most of them have PvP servers, like they segregate the PvP players and they actually have to choose whether they're going to be a PvP player or not. And very few of them allow PvP and PvE players on the same server, okay? But Star Citizen, I believe, is going to allow this. Okay, I know they're going to allow it. I mean, that's their main push, right? Okay, but let's back up. Good players, players that know they're going to succeed at PvP, migrate to the PvP server, and what that or playstyle, and what that does is artificially it creates a higher skill set in the PvP world. Okay, the PvPers tend to be a higher skill set, not because PvP play makes you better. No. PvP players are better. And so they need that extra challenge. So they go to the PvP servers. Okay. If you are just an average player and you go and PvP quite a bit, I'm sure you're going to pick up some skills because you can't be the champion until you beat the champion, right? So you're going to become a better player by PvPing. And I do mean not a better player in the fact that what I'm talking about is the versus part. You are a better competitor against other players. Also, having said that, that's the positive, but there is a negative to PvP playstyle. There are players that enjoy harvesting tears or griefing against other players. They know they're good at it. They just have fun blowing people up just for the fun of blowing people up. They don't have any goal, they don't have any financial reward, and they don't care if they get themselves blown up in the process. That's not what makes them happy. What makes them happy is making you unhappy. Okay, that's their motivation. And you cannot have a griefer as a PvE player. Can't happen. The only way it can happen, and it's the nature of the beast, is PvP play. So a lot of people, this is where the argument comes in, and this is where the PvEers, and I haven't defined them yet, but when the PvEers get upset about PvPers, they're really not talking about the guys that are PvPing because they're engaging in player versus player activities, they're complaining, and they really need to focus their complaints against the griefers. Okay. A pirate is not a griefer. A pirate is somebody who is built into the system. They're the people that, okay, like a non-pirate would carry a cargo from point A to point B. And they know they can do that, and that's how they're going to try to generate interest. A pirate is going to take advantage of that. They're going to lurk in the asteroids or wherever, and then they're going to jump out and take their cargo. That's the nature of the beast. I mean, that's kind of the fun of the game, is to have these players out there that want to be pirates. Okay? I don't understand their motivations, but that's their business, and it's good that they're giving me an opportunity to compete against them, and that's PvP. Now, their motivation is to get the cargo and take it and make money and take advantage of, you know, merchants that, you know, don't have the like an escort or something like that. So that's not griefing. That's not griefing. That's being a PvP player. That's being a pirate. That's being, you know, just the villain. You know, they're just enjoying playing the villain. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because here I am, I'm playing a UEE Marine aerospace pilot trying to defend the UEE, and now I've got players out there that are giving me a target. And so I'm okay with that. And we get to PvP against each other and have a good time. They're not griefing. Now, you got this 12-year-old kid, and I say most griefers are probably 12-year-olds, because, or 12 to 14, because they're immature. They're totally immature. Anybody that griefs, you know, Goon Squad or whoever, they're I know there's probably a few adults, but guess what? They got a 12 to 14-year-old mentality. Really. You just go out there and blow people up just to have fun blowing people up. That doesn't make sense. That's just being stupid, and that's like okay, that's like, let's talk about a totally different game, Airsoft, okay, or War Thunder, or any other game, and you're at your starting location, and you know your spawn point or your entry point into the map or whatever, and they say game on, and you turn and you start shooting your own team. That's a griefer. What does that accomplish? I mean, like, why are you even playing the game? Why do you even play the game? Okay, but this conversation is not about griefers. It's about what PvP is. It is partially about griefers. Okay, let me back up. This video is going to be long, okay, because I am long-winded, and there's a lot of topics, and I haven't even defined all the PvE X's yet, okay? Sorry. But this is a grind my gears that's really heated. What sparked this video is one of the guys in my squadron, the first Royal Aerospace Squadron, that's behind me here. Okay, these guys, one of my Centurions posted a video on his wall. It's from last February or whatever, where there was this guy complaining about PvP players versus PvE players. And then he was complaining about how people didn't understand what the PU meant. Or he didn't understand what the PU meant. And okay, I watched this video, and it just got under my skin. So I'm making this video kind of as a rebuttal, but also kind of just as a explanation, or, you know, to help people understand what the differences are and what the advantages are of having them all in the game, because there is an advantage to every one of them. So, okay, that's PvP. That's just generally what PvP is. PvP is players versus players. When you get an opportunity, you see another player flying by and you shoot him, that's player versus player. When you see another player carrying a cargo and you're carrying the cargo and you get there first, you beat that other player. Or racing. Racing is PvP. Okay, so you're in a race against other players. That's PvP. That's PvP. You're player versus player. That's got to be in the game. I mean, this doesn't have to be in the game. Everything could be the PvE, but there is more challenge against good players, and because good players will be better than the AI most of the time. I mean, they can scale the AI skill to make them super good, but and that's the idea. Is when it also gives you a little bit of satisfaction when you win that race. I'm just going to use that. When you win the race, you go, yes, I beat all these other players. You know, so there's a reward, just motivation. You know, just you know, and whatever. Okay, now let's talk about. I'm jumping to PvE. Okay, let's go to PvE. Player versus environment. Okay, it's been called PvM, which is player versus monsters. Okay, or it could be, as in Star Citizen, we would call it player versus AI. Okay, because we're playing against the computer. Player versus all the NPCs, the computer, the economy, the environment. It's the environment. We're playing against these other players, these other NPCs, non-player characters. So let's say I pick up that cargo and I'm going to carry it to point A, and this NPC picks up the cargo and he's taking it, and that NPC gets there first and delivers the cargo. Just like a player, he beat me. So I am actually competing against the environment. Same thing in a dogfight. It's like Vandal Swarm. You're playing against the environment. You're playing against the monsters. You're playing against the AI. So when the AI Vandals swarm in and you start blasting the Vandals, that's player versus environment. When you play Squadron 42 and you go through all those missions, that's player versus environment. You are taking on the game. You're playing against the game and what the developers have put into the game. A lot of times, you'll find that the game isn't that challenging. Like you've played other games, other MMOs or first-person shooters or whatever, like Halo or who knows what, and you kill the AI left and right, and you're just blowing through the maps, and you're just getting to the end. That's player versus environment. And a lot of people really enjoy that because where else are you going to get Vandal? You know, you're not going to get Vandal as a player, so you can't go player versus Vandal player. You're only going player versus environment when it comes to like Vandals. Then there's going to be, what, they're supposed to be like 20 to 1. I mean, he said 9 to 1, making it a total 100%, like 90 to 10%. Environment versus players, but it is something at what was it, PAX East this last time, he said something like 20 to 1 agents versus players. But either way, what I'm saying is there's going to be a lot of environment out there. There's going to be a lot of pirates, a lot of law enforcement, there's going to be a lot of merchants or whatever that are going to be AI controlled, and they're going to be doing their thing. And you're going to be engaging with AI more often than with players. It's just 20 to 1, you know, unless you're actively seeking player versus player engagements, which I'll explain that in a little bit on how you go about doing that. But if you're just doing the normal game, just having a good old time playing Star Citizen, it's player versus environment 99% of the time. Okay, maybe not 99, maybe 95% of the time. It's going to be player versus environment. Okay, and that's what it is. It's I'm sorry, I'm skipping around, and that's me being scatterbrained. Okay, but who does player versus environment attract? Like PvP, PvP attracts a certain type of player. And I don't mean to be insulting, and I don't mean to downgrade anybody's play style or anything like that, because I feel that I'm going to say this, even though I think that I am more of a PvE player than anything else. I think I'm a PvE player, but there's a type of player that PvE attracts. And I feel like the majority, over 75% of our players in Star Citizen are PvE players. There is a minority called the PvP players, about 25% of them, and maybe even less. But PvE, it attracts players that, one, can't compete against other players because they just aren't that good at it. Okay, so you go against another player, they're, first of all, remember, player versus players tend to attract the best players. So PvE attracts like an average player, a good player, but because the best players are PvP, they tend to kill the PvE players. So the PvE players, there's not a, I'm going to say a fear that the PvP players are going to come in and ruin their game. And they're going to be carrying their cargo, and a PvP player pirate's going to jump on them and kill them every time, and it's going to upset them. And that's what it is. It's the fact that they don't want to be interfered with by other players. That's where the argument is. But the PvE player tends to be a guy that really enjoys playing against the Vandal, the monsters, you know, likes going on quests, likes the story. It's someone that likes the storyline because that really appeals to their creativity. It allows them to interact with all these NPC characters that the developers have made, and it allows for a lot of emergent gameplay. And so that's where the PvE player gets attracted. A player gets attracted to PvE because there's story, there's monsters, there is a challenge because there are AI that are going to compete against them, but they're also probably an average player, or maybe a good player but not the best player. And so when they get ganked by the PvP griefers, they get upset. Okay, now everyone should get upset when a griefer attacks. They should get banned. I mean, there shouldn't, in my opinion, there shouldn't be laws that make it more difficult for a griefer to exist, because griefers don't care about the law. They don't care about the difficulties. That's not something that is in their mentality. All they care about is hurting you, another player. And so by just instituting laws and stuff like that, that's a good start. But once somebody violates that law 2 times, 3 times, they should get banned. Now, what's going to happen? They'll go out and make another account, and they'll come back in and start griefing again. But guess what? To me, that's okay, because now they've got to start over from scratch. If they have to make a new account to come back in and grief, then you're looking at a bunch of noobs griefing. Whether they've been griefing for years, their account will be new, and so they won't have great ships or whatever. So I think they should get banned. Account deleted, whatever. And if they have some way to figure out, if they have some way to determine that it's the same person creating an account, prevent him from making another account. And I don't mean to offend the PvE players, because remember, again, I think that I'm a PvE player, and the reason why is all those reasons. I enjoy the story. I want to fight a lot of Vandals. That's my main thing. I want to fight pirates, and I don't care if they're players or AI. I don't feel like I'm 100% great. Oh, okay, I feel like I'm good. I can compete against other players, but I don't win every time. I'm going to say I win probably less than half of the time. But I still have fun doing it. But no, I feel like I'm a PvE player. And if you disagree or dislike this video, that's fine. Everybody's opinion counts to me. So if you want to like the video or dislike the video, haters are going to hate, for one thing, right? That just happens. But if you like the video, thumbs up to you. I appreciate it. If you dislike the video, thumbs up. I appreciate that too, because every click on the video is helpful. What do they say? Bad publicity is... There is no bad publicity. So if you'd like or dislike the video, that's fine. You know, just get on there and click it. and move on, you know. If you dislike this is just something I thought about just a sec, you know, when I was, if you dislike the video, then you're probably a griefer. But that's okay. That's all right. Griefers are punks. Okay, so let's go to, okay, now, talking about these up here, now you know what a PvP player is and a PvE player is, and those are the ones that are really diametrically opposed. They're the ones that are on both ends of the spectrum, right? You got players that only like playing players, and they think PvEers are punks and jerks and don't need to be even in the game and blah, blah, blah. That's not, you know, the people that say that or are the ones that are vocalizing this on the forums and stuff like that are doing that because they're trolls. They really enjoy doing that. They're haters. They're trying to get a rise out of the PvE players. That's the only reason. Because most PvP players, they could care less if you're flying around doing your player versus environment gameplay. They don't care if you're, they don't care. It's only the griefers or the punks or the trolls. They're the only ones vocalizing it. So if you read anything in the forums that's talking bad about a PvE player, they're a punk. It's plain and simple. Okay, but PvE players, you need to chill out a little bit, because you have a valid argument about PvP players in the fact that if it was only a PvE game, okay, if it was only a PvE game, there would be no griefers. There would be no people coming in interfering with your game. There would only be the environment, and you would have a good time with the storyline and stuff like that. But having the PvP players, actually, first of all, it increases the population in the game. Those PvP players, not all of them are opposed to you. If you are a pirate or whatever, well, there's other pirates that are going to be on your side. The PvP pirates on your side. And there's also, if you're a legitimate citizen, there's going to be tons of legitimate citizens that are on your side. So don't just automatically brush aside the PvPers. When you get into that race, who are you going to race? AI? Come on now. And, you know, pirates out there that are going to be ganking you are not really that big of a deal. And there are laws that prevent them from doing it over and over and over inside controlled space. So I understand you have a legitimate argument, but it's not going to change. That's not going to change. PvA. Let's talk about that. Okay, that's player versus all. Okay. I had to really do some research on PvA and PvR. And I still don't know what PvR is. I think it's player versus a restricted environment. Or maybe it's player versus Roberts. Chris Roberts. You're Dread Pirate Roberts. PvR. I don't have any idea what that is. But PvA is player versus all. I thought it was player versus AI, but that's pretty much PvE. Player versus all meaning, and Star Citizen is pretty much player versus all. You will have AI to fight the environment, player versus environment, but you'll also have players that you'll have to deal with, and that's player versus player. So PvA is Star Citizen. Now let's talk a little bit about, and I understand that I'm long. You need to understand that I'm a very long-winded individual, and when you get me talking about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, I blah blah blah. I'm going to try to keep this video under an hour. I'm going to try to. I might not. If you know me, I got some long videos out there. But okay. Chris Roberts, first of all, he's not an idiot. Okay? He's not an idiot. He's not going to make a play style so dominating that you can't play the other play style and not have a good time. He wants, and any smart game designer wants all of his players to have a good time. Not always happens. Sometimes he's misguided, or I'm not saying Chris is. I'm just saying a game designer might be misguided. Pick one thing or another. All right, guys, now let's talk about a little bit of the misconceptions when it comes to Star Citizen and how you're going to interact with the environment or other players, okay? This might actually alleviate some of your concerns. It might spark some new concerns, but let me explain a couple of things. There is a matchmaking process, okay? So when you're playing the game and you're in the PU, let's back up. Let's talk about the PU just for a second. Okay, in that video, if you remember, like I told you that I was getting all frustrated when I watched this other video, and this is kind of a rebuttal to that. The speaker did not understand what persistent online play meant. And he kept saying, and he kept saying it over and over and over, that the $3 million stretch goal was to have persistent online play, which meant that there was never going to be PvP in the original game. Well, that's incorrect. That's not what that means. Chris Roberts, when he envisioned this game originally and started his Kickstarter, he was thinking small. Like, he wanted just to have a fun game that was really just Squadron, I think Squadron 42 was thrown in there, which is PvE, 40 missions maybe, something like that, 40 mission game, like Wing Commander. But and then in one of the stretch goals, he said there was going to be arena-style combat. Okay, that's the Arena Commander. And then at the 3 million, I don't remember which stretch goal that was, but at 3 million he did say persistent online play. Well, that means there was going to be a universe, or there was going to be, really what that meant was you could play online and your results of whatever your activities were would be saved, and when you next time you logged in, it would be still there, the same. That's what persistent, and that's what online means. Is online, you're on the internet. Does not necessarily mean you're playing other players, and it does not necessarily mean you're not. It's not the same. Okay, persistent online play just meant there was going to be a way to save your results online so that every time you logged in, your results would stack on top of each other. They would continue to go. It wouldn't be a new game every time you logged in. Squadron 42 is your PvE portion of the game that was originally planned, and that is pretty much what Chris Roberts wanted to make at the beginning. He wanted to make a game like his Wing Commander, Privateer, Freelancer type games that you would go around from planet to planet, persistent online, and you would reap the rewards, right? And also he wanted to make a Wing Commander style game, which is a story-driven game that is single player, that you go from point A to point B to point 3 all the way to the end of the story. Nothing to do with player versus player. Player versus player came later, where he decided, hey, you know, why don't we, since we've got the arena style play that was backed, and that's when players will actually be able to fight against other players, why don't we expand that into the universe where we can actually get players versus player in the universe? And it's not saying that he didn't want that originally. He might have wanted that originally, but he wasn't going to post it as that's what he wanted the backers to back. Okay, the game was really got a small concept, and then it grew and grew and grew as the money came in. So as the money came in and he got more and more backers and more millions, he was able to add more and more things that he originally wanted but never really commented about or stated or anything like that. So that was something that he would add on. Let's go back to how the PvP is compared or used in the game compared to PvE. And that's this is really the subject of this video. There is a matchmaking system that's going to place you in the game in an instance or a game cube based on criteria that the game has determined and that you have defined, so that the game will kind of balance it to the best of its ability, and that's got to be worked out through playtesting, so don't stress about that just yet. And then also based on what the player wants to happen. Okay, so they have this thing called the PvP PvE slider bar. Okay, and you can slide it all the way to PvP, you can slide it all the way to PvE, you can leave it in the middle, you can put it 10% one way or the other, or whatever. It's a slider bar. I don't know how many different settings there will be. There might only be two. It might be PvE, PvP, or in the middle. Who knows? There might be bunches of percentages. They could micronize it if they wanted. You know, it's just however far. But what it's basically telling the game, what your profile is telling the game is, do you want the opportunity to PvP, so you slide it to the PvP side, or do you want not to PvP, and you would slide it all the way to PvE. But that's only one of the many, many, many criteria determining what actually spawns in your instance. First of all, to understand the system, you have to understand that there is the persistent universe is controlled outside of your dimension. Okay, let's say the game is in or you are in a certain dimension. There is what's called a galaxy server or a universe server that is processing all the information from all the planets, all the NPCs, all the players. It knows where everybody's at, it knows where all the NPCs are at and what they're doing, and it knows what the economy is doing, what the worlds are doing. It knows what everything is going on. It knows everything. You don't know everything. You are in one little pinpoint of the galaxy, and you know what's in your instance, and that's all you know. I mean, you got friends telling you what's going on in their instances, and their galaxy, their portions of the galaxy. Sure, and you know that. But you don't know everything. And the galaxy server knows everything. Okay. Does it display every single ship in your instance? No. Does it even display any ships in your instance? Probably not. I mean, you're probably going to be flying around doing your own thing and you not see a darn person anywhere. That's 99% of the situation. Okay. But in the galaxy server, it's going to have, it's going to know, let's say, it knows that there's a merchant ship taking a cargo from this planet to this planet, and it might pass through your instance. Might. There's probably a probability, and that's the instance that's the GameCube probability of it actually showing up in your instance. It might be 10%, 15%. It's going to be low. It's going to be low. Okay. So let's say you just got lucky and this ship is flying through your instance. It's AI controlled, PvE. It's doing its thing, whatever. Let's say that let's say you are a PvP pirate, let's just say, and you decide, hey, there's this cargo ship going through my area. I'm gonna go attack it. I'm gonna take its cargo. So you merrily fly over there and start attacking you. It's going to send out a message, saying, help, I'm under attack. I've got pirates attacking me. Okay. And that's an automated broadcast. It goes out to all the different players in the area and NPCs. And the Galaxy server keeps track of that. And it's going to say, hey, it's going to say, okay, well, who's in range? Oh, okay, these 5 people are in range. NPCs and players are in range. Hey, this one guy is getting attacked by a pirate. He needs help. And this is the instance that it's at. It's not exactly. He's going to say grid coordinates or whatever. And you're going to see it on, and you're going to accept that mission to go rescue him. You're going to warp in. But you don't have to accept that mission. You don't have to go in. You can ignore it. But if you accept, you're saying to the Galaxy server, please put me in that instance. And then you're going to do your little quantum travel, and you're going to show up in that instance. And guess what? At that time, it's a 100% chance you're going to see that merchant ship getting his ass kicked. You're going to see the pirate attacking him, which is probably a player. And you're going to engage in player versus environment play. And you're going to do that. But that was voluntary. You didn't have to do that. You fight it off. You win. You lose. Whatever. You had a good time. Whatever. You move on. That's one scenario. Another scenario is you are the merchant ship. You are the player that's getting attacked by AI or another player. Possible. You put out a help request. AI or players might show up, or they might not, because they don't want to get involved in a PvP fight, because that's not who they are. But maybe they are. Maybe they're excited about PvP play, and they fly in to help you out. And then you fight it out, and you win or you lose or whatever. They don't have to show up. Okay, but in that case, you're being attacked, so you're hoping they show up, right? Okay, so you have your slider bar. And what that's saying is, and I hear that only applies outside of controlled space. That's what I heard in the video. That's not true. Or rephrase that. It only applies inside UE space. It doesn't apply outside UE space. That does not 100% true. It's pretty close, but it's not 100% true. Because the way the instancing system or the matchmaking system works is, and I don't know exactly the details because I haven't put all the details out, but they have given us a lot of information. One of them is the matchmaking system, before it puts 2 players in the same instance, before it does that, it looks at a couple of different things. It checks to see where their PvP slider is. It checks to see, are you on each other's friends list? Are you a person of interest, meaning you're maybe a bounty hunter and you're chasing this pirate? So if you are, it's going to try to put you in the same instances because you're trying to locate that person. Are you in the same geographical location, meaning your ping and your lag and all that stuff? It might be about the same. It checks that. It checks to see how many kills versus how many deaths you've had. What kind of a vessel are you equipped with? It's basically checking your fighting capability. So it checks your KDR, so it wants to know how good the pilot is. It checks your equipment, like do you have this super mega awesome ship that has everything upgraded, and the other player doesn't, it's probably not going to put you together. Are you a griefer? If you're a known griefer, guess what? You're not going to go in the same instance. You're going to be in your own instance. So don't fear. The matchmaking system looks at all this stuff before it decides to put you 2 together. It's not just going to put any player with any player. That's not that's not the plan. If he's PvP 100% and you're PvE 100%, you still might get matched. just based on the scaling of how everything is done. Okay, if they're saying that being on the friends list or the person of interest list is the most important thing, then whether you've got PvP slider all the way to PvE or not, you still might get pursued by a bounty hunter or whatever. Now, that does not apply. It applies differently when you're outside of controlled space. Okay, when you're outside of controlled UE space, you can count that as PvP areas. Just call it PvP. PvP free, or whatever you want to call it. Uncontrolled space. So when you're out there, your PvE slider will still apply, but there's going to be a whole lot of other PvP players out there, and they might or might not show up in your instance, just because of pure quantity of PvP players. Plus, Chris Roberts, my understanding is, he wants pirates and uncontrolled space. He wants to give those PvP players hope, basically, to give them an area that they can go and enjoy their play style. So those lawless areas will, and that seems logical to me. A lawless area will have the PvPers out there, because they're mostly probably going to be pirates, possibly, if they're in the lawless area and they're PvPers. And that's where they belong. They belong in the lawless area. Now to say that all the best stuff, this was another quote, all the best equipment and gadgets and gear and exploration abilities, all that stuff is going to be in lawless space. Let me say this. I believe that to be partially true. I do believe that a lot of good stuff is going to be found in lawless space. And less good stuff. There will be good stuff, but it'll just be less quantified in the controlled space. One reason why I think that is, in fiction, would be there's a whole lot of people in controlled space. And it's pretty much been patrolled and explored, and everybody knows where everything is. So you're not going to find anything unusual or rare there because it's already been found. Where in lawless space, you're looking at unexplored territory, people inventing new things and stuff like that. So you can expect a lot more of it there. Now, comparing it to other MMOs, you have, and most recent MMO I played was the Elder Scrolls Online. But you can go to any of the other MMOs that I've played anyway, like Warhammer Online, Lord of the Rings Online, Conan, Elder Scrolls, City Heroes. I think I played Rift. There is another one. I'm trying to think of what it's called. Oh, Lineage. Whatever. Any of these other MMOs. You have player versus environment play, where you go around, you get drops, basically. You blow up, you kill a monster, and it gives you 5 gold or whatever. And then you get, like, maybe a +1 sword. Okay. But when you play PvP battles, like you go into specific raids or PvP battles, you get +5 swords, or you get 500 gold, or whatever. And so you're getting rewarded for doing the PvP battling because it's more challenging. It's harder to do. So I understand it's like it's the norm. So don't complain about the PvPers having all the best stuff, because guess what? That's the nature of the beast. That is the same in almost every MMO. And is it going to be in lawless space? Probably, because that's where Chris is pushing all of the PvPers. Because he knows that there's a bunch, 75% plus, PvEers that want to just do their thing. And that's going to be inside controlled space, lawful space. So by putting the PvPers outside in uncontrolled space and putting all the really cool stuff out there, don't complain about that. That's normal. I'm probably not going to go out there and deal with it. I'm going to be PvEing inside control space 99% of the time. Might venture out there, never know, Project Pitchfork, whatever, who knows. But that's not a valid argument. Don't say they're giving all the good stuff, all the good to the PvPers. That's the same. Have you ever played an MMO? Because that's the same in every single MMO. He's not going to give all the good stuff to the PvEers or the inside control space. That'd be too easy to get. So no, it's going to go to the PvPers. If you want it, go risk yourself to go get it. Now, I read another comment about somebody saying that if you take 20,000 tons of cargo from point A to point B inside controlled space, and you'll get paid like 1,000 UEC. And then if you take 20,000 of the same cargo in a uncontrolled area, you'll get like the same 1,000, but you might get an extra 50% because it's in a PvP area. Well, guess what? That's not the way it's going to work. No, each planet's going to have their own amount that they're going to be paying for these cargoes. One might be higher than the other, but I don't think that just because it's in uncontrolled space, sorry, I'm itching. I don't think just because it's in uncontrolled space that it's going to be a higher value or anything like that. I think PvP areas will have their own reward just because you get to play against other players and stuff like that. It's like gold is its own reward, or experience is its own reward. And so that's, you know, kind of like, that's the saying I bring back from D&D, the old D&Ds, where you would get like so many gold for defeating a monster or whatever, and then you would get an equal number of experience points for every gold piece you picked up. As a DM, I didn't do that. I said, screw you. You get either experience or gold. You don't get both. Well, you could get both, but they don't. The gold doesn't also add to your experience because gold is its own reward. Okay, experience is its own reward. Gold is its own reward. You don't get both for both. Okay. Okay, so, sorry, distracted myself. Okay, let's, what else? Oh, extremists. Yeah, you're going to see I think I've already talked about this. There's PvP extremists, there's PvE extremists, and I don't know why they fight. Okay, I think I've already talked about that. We'll skip that. Best stuff in the lawless world, talked about that, because he just wants to give hope to the PvPers, because they can't come into the PvE area and do raids or whatever. I mean, they can, but then they're going to get made criminals, and you know, so there's going to be laws and stuff like that preventing that. And the PU is not PvP. They don't equal. The PvP is a style of play, and the PU is the game. It's where you do everything, not how you do everything. Okay, what else do I got? No financial benefits. Yeah, there's no financial benefit. I think I've already talked about that with the plus or minus based on where you sell it. It has to do with what the mission is and what that planet is paying. And there's a lot of variables. Okay, I think I've pretty much talked about everything. So okay, so the bottom line is, let me summarize. The bottom line is, there's a bunch of PvP players out there, and they're good at fighting and playing against other players, and they enjoy it. And then there's the PvE players, which really like the storyline, the story-driven. They like the monsters, you know. They like interacting with each other. Role players are even fallen usually into the PvE area because of storylines. And PvE players would never interfere with PvP players. At all. Like, there's no way they can interfere because they can't attack them, because guess what? They're PvE only. But PvP players can attack PvE players. They can interfere with them, cause them to have an unenjoyable experience by griefing them or just interfering with them. So the only valid argument would be anybody from the PvE community saying, oh, the PvP players are blah, 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 I don't want them in my game. But guess what? Chris is going to put them in the game, so there's no real argument. You just need to live with it, okay? Or find a way to avoid them, or whatever. So PvP players have griefers. There are griefers, and the laws are probably not going to be stringent enough. I want to get them banned. I want their accounts to be locked. So they can't open up any new accounts. That's if they're a known griefer. Now, how do you know if somebody's griefing or if they're just being a pirate? You know, there's a fine line. I mean, how do you know? If this 12-year-old comes in and he attacks you, maybe he's trying to get your cargo. Maybe he's not griefing you. He's just trying to get his cargo. So you can't immediately jump to grief. Maybe he's just being a pirate. Now, let's say you're flying along and he just flies up and rams into you. Well, maybe he's a bad pilot. Maybe he's an idiot. Okay? You know, maybe he's just stupid. Okay? And then the only way you can really say he's griefing is if he respawns, which you don't do, in your instance, and then he rams you again. And then he respawns and he rams you again. Now that's a griefer. But the game doesn't allow for that. Because when you die, okay, let's say he rams you, his ship's blown up, he dies. He respawns at his last hospital location that he was ever at or near. So like the planet. He's never going to find you again. Ever. I mean, there's millions of players. And you're in an instance that he only has like a 5% chance of entering. If he's invited. And your slider bars are, well, they might have been similar because he found you the first time. But, yeah, I don't think we need to worry about too much griefing. And I don't think we need to worry about PvP play interfering with your PvE experience. So my thing is just chill out. No need to get crazy. The PU is not equal to PvP. PvP, I think, has been on Chris Roberts' want list ever since day one. He might not have put it in any of the stretch goals until, you know, because he wasn't sure how much money he was going to make. So he was going to make a small game and expand upon it, expand upon it, expand upon it, as long as he's getting more and more money. He's in the market for making. Oh, well, let me talk about one more last thing. Oh, sorry. Insurance. I've got to talk about insurance. Griefers should not have insurance. Basically, they should have their insurance policy canceled. Okay? Probably will. That's probably going to happen. Let's say you get your ship blown up. You're not going to get just the hull with no seats and consoles, no guns, no engines, no whatever. You're not going to get a ship like that. Insurance, when it says hull insurance, what it's saying is you're going to get a stock ship. You're going to get engines. You're going to get landing gear. You're going to get chairs and computers and sensors, and you're going to get everything that ship normally comes with in a package, let's say. That's what you would get. Not just the external shell, the hull. Thinking that makes you kind of clueless. You're going to get the whole ship, but guess what? It's not going to have any of your upgrades on it. So yeah, if you upgraded a gun, or if you bought like some really cool weapons to mount on it, the insurance doesn't cover that. But I'm sure you can get insurance that will cover that. It'd just be a little extra. Alright, well, thanks guys for coming out and checking out this video. Please like it if you liked it, and please dislike it if you're a griefer. And we'll see you, or maybe not, in the verse.